Welcome into the Your Illini Nation pregame show here on a Friday night. Back again, Friday Night Lights. Andy Olson and Jeremy Werner with you as we get you set for Illinois against Nebraska here at a very chilly Memorial Stadium. Jeremy, the temperatures have dropped, but I think more importantly and probably more of an impact on the game, the wind is blustery right now, and as Kevin Leidy is reporting, up to 30-mile-per-hour gusts during the game. And I have to imagine that's going to have a big impact on this one.
Yeah, October came in fiercely, and hope you're not like Joey Wagner and bring a coat tonight, maybe some hoods, maybe some hats, mittens. But it does feel like football. I'm sure these guys are happy about it. It's been hot on the Saturday game so far, but we need to see a hotter Illinois football team, Andy. They are really struggling at this point. Two teams really needing a win. It's a big Friday night game for these two Big Ten West opponents.
Yeah, Friday nights are always interesting. You know, typically we think about high school football, Friday Night Lights, but Illinois going to be playing in front of a national TV audience once again. Fox Sports 1, 7 p.m. kickoff for this one, of course. And Jeremy, I think we'll start with just some of the news up front. What's kind of nice about this new rule with the injury report before games is it gives us something to talk about. But lot to talk about in Illinois' injury report before today's game.
Yeah, the surprise is that Josh McCray, running back, is out. We didn't hear about any injury. Brett Bielema did not make any mention of this. We didn't see him get injured at Purdue, but Josh McCray is out with an unspecified injury. So, of course, you already lost a running back for the season, Jordan Anderson. Now you're out Josh McCray. Reggie Love is back. He's not on the injury report. He was questionable last week, did not play at Purdue. So you'll get him back. I would imagine he starts. Aiden Walker will play a little bit more, but I think this sets up. This is a Caden Fagan game. This is going to be the freshman from Atwood's probably most important game and probably the most carries he'll get. So I think we've all wanted to see more Caden Fagan. Now we're going to have to see it because he is their big back option tonight, but he has shown the most explosiveness, I think. He's shown, I think he's the most talented running back they have. So we'll see what he and Reggie Love can do with Josh McCray out tonight. No surprise at the guard position, Cy Chrysler, who's really carted off the field at the end of the game. He's listed as questionable. I have doubts on whether he will play, but we'll see as they come out of the tunnel. Josh Geske is questionable. Brett Bielema seemed to hint that he practiced this week. Seemed more optimistic that Josh Geske could start today or could play today. But I would imagine Jordan Slaughter is going to play a bigger role. Maybe we see more of Zach Barlett and Hunter Whitenack. Brandon Henderson, a true freshman, Brett Bielema mentioned, could be in play too. The other note on that injury report, because it was a little bit longer than we expected, is Tariq Barnes listed as questionable. We do not know what that injury is. Now, I would say it's not as big of a deal as you would have thought. A two-time team captain, a guy who started the last 2 years. He has not played a lot of reps the last couple of weeks. Dylan Rosiak, James Kreutz have played more reps. We've seen Keneno Oduruga play a bigger role as well. So I don't know if that's a big loss, but it is a notable name on the injury report that we did not know about.
Yeah, all right, well, let's break those down. You did a good job of breaking it down already, but that's specifically the running back room. Of course, having to rely on a couple of freshmen, Aiden Lawfrey and Caden Fagan Moore, is not something that I think that we've seen from Brett Bielema just in his 3 years here so far. There's been a few of those true freshmen, redshirt freshmen that have broken out. But as far as one of his favorite positions, one thing Brett Bielema is known for, it's the offensive line in the run game. He's relying on a couple of guys that he's only had in the building for a couple of seasons. Behind Reggie Love, who, of course, back tonight will be a huge pickup for them. But I think you're right that Caden Fagan, especially last week against Purdue, has kind of shown that he might be ready for that bigger role.
Yeah, we talk about recruiting and how with the new Big Ten, Illinois is going to have to keep up recruiting because competition gets even harder and harder. These are two of the best recruiting wins Brett Bielema's gotten at a position where you can make an impact early. And I think we've seen Josh McCray is not a very explosive back, right? He's really struggled even in some short yardage situations this year, though he's had some good carries. He had some good ones against FAU. Reggie Love, not the most explosive back. Aiden Lawfrey is the fastest running back they have. Caden Fagan, so far, has been the most explosive guy they have, even at 6'3", 250. But these are guys who chose Illinois over Iowa, over Caden Fagan, Notre Dame, Miami. These are guys who need to make an impact. They just don't have a ton of experience. But I do think getting Fagan in there the last couple of weeks has been important. It's been more towards the end of games when they've either been out of hand for good or for worse for Illinois. But now it's their time to shine against the Nebraska run defense. That is really good. Their defensive front is really good. So their offensive line's got to be better. But outside of Isaiah Williams, Illinois is looking for a consistent playmaker. Can Fagan or Lawfrey show up and get a couple big plays tonight?
Yeah, before we get into the matchup specifically, that offensive line injury as well, they're going to be going to some guys behind Chrysler and Geske that haven't had a lot of time to prove themselves. I know Brandon Henderson's name, the true freshman, was brought up a couple of times. Jordan Slaughter, of course, is a guy that we probably expect to see at guard as well. Hunter Whiteneck as well. How do you see the depth of that position and how that's going to affect that interior offensive line?
Well, we expected offensive line to be a strength this season, right? Like we expected offensive line, defensive front to be strengths. And while the defensive front's had its moments, the offensive line has been the true weakness of this team. It's one of the most disappointing points of the team so far. And while Zy Chrysler has really struggled this season, he continues to play a ton of reps. And there's a reason. We've seen Jordan Slaughter come in and be okay, not better than Chrysler. We saw Hunter Whiteneck come in last week, a sophomore, and he struggled. Zy Chrysler has played better than those guys. So that's a real concern going up against a Nebraska defensive interior on their line that is really strong. Hutmaker, their guy in the middle at nose guard, is really, really good. So it's a huge concern. And you wonder how Barry Lunny, the offensive coordinator, how are they going to scheme around this? Brett Bielema said after the game, we know who we are now. Yeah. We have to call plays or call offense that helps put our guys in best positions. I think you're going to see more tight ends on the field. I think we'll see more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 13 personnel, 3 tight ends. Help those guys not only pass coverage, but get that run game going.
Yeah. You mentioned off the top that Illinois needs to start getting hot, and they faced an opponent who sits in the same boat as them. Both these teams come in 2-3 on the season. Illinois coming off the tough loss to Purdue, where they gave up 44 points. Nebraska coming off the tough loss against Michigan, where they gave up 45. So both 0-2 in the Big Ten as well, Jeremy. It seems like this could be a defining game for either of these two teams' season, because getting to 3-3 is a big step up from being 2-4 after this game.
Listen, I usually don't go to the must-win territory, but if Illinois wants to make a bowl game, this is a must-win.
For sure.
This is a Nebraska team that is rebuilding. I don't think anybody's surprised Nebraska is 2-3.
Sure.
At this point, right? They played a Colorado team that might have been better than people thought they would be. Lost a close one at Minnesota. So Minnesota's not a great team. Neither is Illinois. So this could be a really close game. But I think they're going to be competitive in the trenches, but they just do not have the playmakers on the perimeter. They do not have the talent up and down the roster to really compete atop the Big Ten. But if they beat Illinois, they still have some winnable games out on the schedule that maybe they can eke into a bowl game. But if you're Illinois, you go to Maryland next week. For my money, Maryland's the 4th best team in the Big Ten. Yeah. Or maybe the 3rd best. I don't know. But that's a tough road game. Then you get Wisconsin in 2 weeks. They look like the best team in the Big Ten West by default at this point.
I think so, probably.
So those are your 2 toughest games remaining. That's next. And then you'd have to win out to get to a bowl. I don't see it happening, right? I do not see it happening. So Illinois has to win this game if they want to make a bowl game, which is I did not think we'd be talking about at this point in the season. But I see this as an absolute must win. And they just have to play much better football than we've seen all year. They've gotten in their own way so many self-inflicted wounds with penalties, turnovers, mental errors, all those things that Brett Bielema teams have not been. This has to be their best games.
Yeah, Brett Bielema talked about, as far as scouting the Huskers, that their run game is something that they're really going to be keying in on. Wow, whether that is the running backs themselves, the quarterbacks, maybe some wide receiver end-arounds. Brett Bielema mentioned it all. Is that where you see the strength in this team as well, Jeremy? Because quarterback a question mark. They made a change mid-season, and it seems like that if Illinois wants to win, it's going to start in that front 8.
Well, the good thing about Nebraska is they're a really one-dimensional offense.
Sure.
The bad thing about Nebraska is they're kind of a challenge because they're kind of a throwback running team. They have 2 tight ends on the field. They'll have 2 running backs on the field at the same time. They run a traditional option where the quarterback go out and pitch the ball, right? Yeah. You don't see that a lot because that pitch is really dangerous. They do those things, but that means your eye discipline has to be good, and they're a physical football team. Unlike the Scott Frost era, this is a physical football team under Matt Rule, and they you know what they're going to do. They're going to try and run the football. They're not a good passing team. They only have a couple wide receivers that can make a difference. So Illinois' defensive front, we expected them to be a strength. They've been a little disappointing outside of Johnny Newton and a little bit of Keith Randolph this year. Those guys have to play better. The outside linebackers, the inside linebackers have to be really good in their run fits. They have to be better up front to be able to stop this run, because if you put them in third and long, they're really going to struggle to score points, to get third down conversions. So Illinois needs to do all those things extremely well today. But it is a little bit of a challenge because Nebraska's a physical football team. Illinois prides itself on being the tough team. They have not been that. They've been outplayed in the trenches for most of the year this year. They have to be better up front. So we'll see if they can bring it. This is a lunch pail kind of game. And they're going to run the football. Illinois needs to stop them. And their quarterback, Heinrich Harburg, he can break one. He can break a big one. He's a really good athlete, really big guy, 6'5", 220. So he's a load to bring down. Yeah,
and that's not exactly Illinois' strength, as we've seen in the first two games of this season. Of course, Toledo's Finn and Kansas's Daniels, both running quarterbacks, and Illinois struggled in those games. So you bring in Harburg, who can move. If he can scoot, he may have a chance against the Illinois defense. I want to get your opinion as well about the quarterback spot. Harburg comes in for, I think what most people assumed, Jeff Sims was just going to come out and win the job just because of how good he was for, you could call it a bad Georgia Tech team last season. But it's Harburg now, and he brings that different element, I think, to this team.
Yeah, Jeff Sims, a really talented player. Was it Jameer Gibbs and Jeff Sims at one point at Georgia Tech? But he had 4 turnovers, 4 interceptions in his first 2 starts, got several fumbles, just couldn't take care of the ball. Then he had an ankle injury. So it's kind of been a mixture of performance and injury with him. But they brought in Harburg, and he's not a great passer. He only completes about 54% of his passes, doesn't have a great wide receiver crew, but he does have a strong arm, so he can test you a little bit there. But he's a big guy, 6'5", 220, really athletic. He likes to hold the ball high and tight, so you see him run like that. But he can get loose on you for some big gains. He's probably their best rusher right now. The thing about Nebraska is they lost their 2 best running backs to season-ending injuries already. Their starter last year, Anthony Grant, ran for 900 yards. So it's not like he's a nobody. He's still a talented guy, but they do not have a lot of depth at running back either. So Illinois is physical, beat these guys up a little bit. That certainly can help them. But just got to be sound. Illinois has 18 tackles against Purdue, according to Aaron Henry. You got to be able to wrap up and make the play at the line of scrimmage. And to be honest with you, the linebackers so far this year, they have not been physical enough. They need to be violent, they need to attack, and they need to be decisive in their run fits.
So it seems like the weather maybe plays into more what Nebraska was going to do anyways. They're not being limited by that consistent 20-mile-per-hour wind, sometimes gusting up to 30 miles per hour tonight. Illinois on offense, we've seen Luke Altmaier have his moments. If you look at it from, if you want to call it analytics, EPA per play, he's right about middle of the pack for the Big Ten. But if you're going to have to deal with the wind, that may take that element of the offense away from the Illini. And you know what? No one's putting Barry Lunny on the hot seat, but I think people need to understand, or maybe even in the building, they understand that the offense needs to play better.
Yeah, it was the takeaway after the game against Purdue, right? I mean, Brett Bielema basically calling out his offensive staff that we are not putting these guys in consistent spots to succeed, and that maybe they'd have to have some harsh conversations. And Barry Lunny said it was basically like the same week, but they are frustrated. They're really frustrated with the offense because you see these glimpses where this is a much better big play offense than last year. They are more explosive, especially with the way Isaiah Williams is playing. He's been a huge bright spot. Luke Altmaier has had some big plays. It's just the consistency. They're not consistently running the ball on first and second down. They're too consistently having negative plays, whether it's the turnovers, and Luke Altmaier a really bad one with that fumble, or it's the pass protection. Just hasn't been there this year. So what can the coaching staff do to change those things? I think they got to get more to their RPO game, get the ball out quickly. We saw Tommy DeVito do that really well last year. You got to run the ball more effectively. Maybe Caden Fagan can help them there. But I think they got to get more tight ends on the field to help their offensive line, establish that run game, and maybe get some misdirection. Get those tight ends involved in the passing game a little bit more. I think they can do that. And get Luke Altmaier involved in the run game a little bit. You know, Nebraska struggled to contain that a little bit, just like Purdue did heading into last week. So Isaiah Williams has been the one consistent. Luke Altmaier with his legs being able to make plays has been consistent. Everything else needs to be far more consistent. And when you're losing some players due to injury, that gets tougher and tougher. But it's a big game. Illinois needs to score 20-plus points.
Yeah,
right? They need to score 20-plus points against this team. And you figured year 2 under Barry Lunny, they'd be able to do that. They have not due to a multitude of factors, whether it's a young quarterback who's still going through growing pains of decision-making, a way worse offensive line than he thought, and need a guy like Pat Bryant, or now Caden Fagan, or Reggie Love to really step up as a complimentary playmaker.
Yeah, I think what you bring up with the wide receivers and just finding that playmaker is, to me, one of the biggest points that I took away from Purdue is it seems like, specifically in that wide receiver room, if you're watching some of these replays from all the way out, there seems to be a lack of separation. Yeah. Like, do you see that as well? And like, I don't know if that's something you can exactly coach like middle of the season.
It's talent, Andy.
Yeah.
Usually that comes down to quickness and speed.
Yeah.
Yes, route running is all a part of it.
Yeah.
You see Isaiah Williams getting open a lot. Why? Because he's quick and he's fast.
Exactly.
He's a really talented guy that's really improved his route running. But Pat Bryant got separation on that play. You got to haul that one in. Was it a perfect ball? No, but it was a good enough ball from Luke Altmaier. He catches that ball, gets a touchdown. That's a completely different game. Or if Luke Altmaier makes the throw to Henry Boyer for a touchdown, it's a completely different game. Illinois is not good enough to miss those plays. So they got to get those guys more involved. And Pat Bryant needs to be more consistent. They expected a lot more out of him this year. Casey Washington, solid player, good veteran. He just doesn't get consistent separation. So do you see more Kenari Wiltshire, who's really fast and can get separation? Do you see more Malik Elzy, who we've seen ups and downs? So it's hard to rely on some of those young guys. Illinois does need to get more talent on the field. But again, that's why I keep going back to the tight ends. Yeah. Maybe running more plays with those guys, misdirection, getting Luke Altmaier moving in the pocket. Maybe gets those guys some easier catches.
And Brett Bielema has been very complimentary of his tight ends. It seems like every time that we talk with him, talking about how deep that room is. You got Tip Ryman, Griffin Moore. He's gone even down to Tanner Arkin, who's a guy that it feels like we haven't seen a ton on the field. Do you share that same assessment that getting those guys more involved, just 3 deep, 4 deep, can be beneficial?
I don't think it's a magic bullet, but I think they help you run the football.
Yeah.
And then I think they can help you pass protect too.
Yeah.
So those two things really should help this team right now, just because the offensive line is struggling a lot. And then I think they're pretty consistent pass catchers. We haven't seen Tip Ryman, Griffin Moore really drop the ball. Henry Boyer hasn't been put in many of those situations. But those guys have had a little consistent hands, and I think you can just get to those guys the ball quicker just by posting up, quick 5 yards, 6 yards. Maybe that can help your run game on first and second down. So it's just something I'd like to see more, because when they have played 2 and 3 tight ends, they've had some nice production.
Yeah. So today, Illinois going with this is the breaking jersey news. It looks like it's blue over blue, orange helmet as always. So in case you were wondering, maybe they're trying to keep some of that juju going from FAU. They're 1-0 in that so far this season. But let's switch to the defensive side of the ball again, Jeremy. And the secondary, for me, has been one of the more interesting parts of this defense all season, just because you lose so much from last year. You got to have different guys step up this year. Matt Rule was very complimentary of how Aaron Henry is adjusting the defense to fit the type of players that he has now. But you look at what happened against Purdue. The offense not playing well doesn't put 44 points up on the board. Now, it doesn't help with the field position and stuff like that. But this secondary, I felt like the same way that the wide receivers have had ups and downs, they've had their ups and downs as well. And I feel like tonight's game, not going to be a lot of throwing. You have to limit those opportunities, plus be willing tacklers in the run game as well to really make an impact.
I think that's probably the most important thing about the secondary. But I think if you're Aaron Henry against a team that does struggle to throw the ball. Listen, Marcus Washington was a top recruit out of Trinity Catholic. He's a wide receiver for Nebraska. Billy Kemp, we know from the Virginia games. He transferred from Virginia. He's a talented enough guy, but those aren't great wide receivers. You hope you can go one-on-one with Miles Scott deep covering everything. Those guys got to be good in run support. But the most important thing for me in the secondary, you got to stop with the penalties. Illinois team in the Big Ten, they're giving up almost 4 first downs just on penalties, and a lot of them are just in huge moments on third down. That happens so much against Purdue. That's prolonging drives. That's ending up in points. That's ending up in losses. They need to stop with those penalties. It's been consistent all year. Those penalties got to go away, but they got to get more of a pass rush when they do throw the ball. But I expect Illinois to load the box tonight. I expect the outside linebackers, 3 defensive linemen, a 5 bare front, Bear front, Dick Butkus, obviously being honored today, but I expect Illinois to load that box. I think it's a huge game for the linebackers.
Yeah.
You think Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph should be able to be disruptive, right? You need those other players to be disruptive too, so they just can't run away from those guys.
All right, well, you mentioned it, Dick Butkus being honored tonight. A couple of cool things going on. Of course, it's going to have the moment of silence before the game, and they are going to play some videos before the game and at halftime as well. Illinois has stickers on their helmet tonight in honor of Dick Butkus, and I think one of the coolest things, and you'll see this during the broadcast, is that on the 50-yard line, the 50 outlined in orange, and not an easy thing to do with the turf, but of course with the news coming down yesterday, of course, they deciding to go with that honor for him. Of course, the number that Dick Butkus wore at Illinois, number 50, and that is just one of two that are retired here at the University of Illinois. Very cool things. I'm already seeing, we saw a cutout of Dick Butkus already. I see some Dick Butkus jerseys all around, and that might be some of the energy that Illinois needs to kind of use, some of that Dick Butkus meanness to win this one.
Yeah, that Dick Butkus physicality, that is for sure. Yeah, I was out at the Dick Butkus statue a few hours before the game, and I was catching up with people that were stopping there and paying tribute. There were Nebraska fans that laid flowers there. There were people who were Packers fans that were stopping by the statue to kind of pay homage to maybe the most famous linebacker in football history.
Yeah.
And it all started here really in Illinois. I mean, Chicago vocational, of course, but he really made his name with the Illini and then, of course, with the Chicago Bears. Was just an absolute legend, and everyone, even if you didn't see him play, you know who Dick Butkus is.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of transcended sports, but everyone kind of knows the aura, the myth of Dick Butkus is that he was just the meanest guy on the field. Now, off the field, everyone seemed to really enjoy it, and everyone seemed to think he was a gentleman. And I just remember 4 years ago at a statue ceremony, that press conference was legendary. You could just see the Dick Butkus coming out of Dick Butkus with the way he thought about the game. But, the Bears used some of that energy, it seemed, last night. We'll see if the Illini can do that. But Illinois, alma mater, has a jersey, number 50, Dick Butkus. It was great that 4 years ago, while he was still here with us, he was able to see himself get honored. He's a part of the Hall of Fame here at Illinois. Just one of the greats in Illini athletics history. Yeah,
definitely going to be an aura around this one because of yesterday's news. The coaching staff, everyone is going to be wearing sweatshirts with the helmet with the number 50 on it today, as well as one of those other memorials for Dick Butkus. It's going to be some good defense, I think, being played tonight, and maybe we'll see if he has something to do with that. But Illinois favored in this one by 3.5. At least that's what it was a couple of hours ago. The total keeps falling, I think, because of the weather. And as I look up at that,
50-something, now it's 43.5, I believe.
I think I saw 42.5 before the game too. It's falling, and I think I understand why when I look up at that American flag that is just rippling in the wind right now. Before we get into our predictions, Jeremy, we'll start with just some of our last thoughts about how both teams need this, it feels like.
No, they do. And for Illinois, I think this is more important. Nebraska's in a rebuild. It's year one. They'd love to get this one on the road, give them improvement. But if Illinois loses this, it feels like they're losing all the momentum of last year. You start 2-4, 0-3 in the Big Ten, you're back to the bottom of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then you have Indiana, Northwestern, who are also at the bottom of the Big Ten. Can you beat them? That's what we're starting to think about.
Yeah.
Can they win another game this year? Because Northwestern has been better. So for Illinois, they didn't bat down any of the talk of expectation. Yeah. They embraced it. They were talking about it. I said it last week. You got to go prove it. You got to go prove it. Otherwise, people are going to check out. People are not going to come to the stadium. This is a big game, and I feel like I know it's early. I feel like it's a big game for Brett Bielema's program.
Yeah.
Because if you want to continue, building off of what you did last year, I don't see how you can do that this year without winning today. So I hate to put it all on this game. And if they beat Wisconsin or beat Maryland, maybe they feel better, like they can come back from it. But just in this moment, this feels like a huge moment for the team. I feel my keys, Andy. Yeah. Win the first quarter. They've been outscored 39-10 in the first quarter. win the turnover battle. You have not won the turnover battle yet this year. They almost did every game last year. Nebraska is as bad as them in the turnover margin. I would feed Isaiah Williams consistently and often, and then you just got to be a more physical team. I think Nebraska's prided themselves so far this year on at least being a very physical team. They're going to bring it to Illinois tonight, so Illinois got to return the favor, and that's what Brett Bielema team is supposed to be.
When we think about this juncture of the season, I think that if you could pick any team for Illinois to play where they are coming off that disappointment against Purdue, Nebraska would be up there. But because of that, like you said, it brings the realness of this game and what it means for this season and for this program right now. Everything you said is correct. If they lose this one, there's only a few teams worse than them in the Big Ten right now. Like this, not to put like a ton of expectation on it.
But if you win,
sure, it all goes away.
The next 2 weeks at Maryland, I think that's a really tough game. I don't see Illinois winning that. You come home against Wisconsin, I still give you a chance at home against a Big Ten West team that honestly has been okay, but not been great. But then as you go to the rest of the schedule, you still got Northwestern, you still got Indiana, right? You still got Minnesota. Like, there are still winnable games where you can bounce back and get some momentum. They just got to stop getting in their own ways with these turnovers, penalties, and really slow starts. So we'll see. I keep saying now, prove it.
Yeah.
It's another prove-it opportunity for Illinois, and they're doing it on national television.
Yeah, short week as well. That's one of the other factors in this, not just for Illinois, but for Nebraska as well. Illinois does get to stay at home with that short week for whatever much that means. But, Jeremy, like I said, 3 points in Illinois' favor, this total falling into the low 40s. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, I did pick my score before the spread came out.
Yeah.
So I actually had Illinois not covering but winning.
Okay.
This is my last time. Last time, Illinois. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm holding on right now. Before the season, I think I had a 31-13 win or something in this.
Because you would have expected that before the season, but things have.
I can't trust this team right now, but I do think I expect Illinois' defense to show up tonight.
Yeah.
They just can't. They got to be able to tackle. But Nebraska's offense is really one-dimensional. I expect Illinois' defense to give them a chance to win. For me, it's about can the offense, can they move the ball against Nebraska defense that is physical, that will stop the run. They need a really good game from Luke Altmaier. Luke Altmaier's had some ups and downs, but now kind of have to treat him as a veteran. This is his 7th career start at this level. So you guys see some of those reads, those decision makings, the turnovers start to change for him. He's been a bright spot at times, but he's hurt you at times. It's got to even out a little bit tonight. But I have Illinois winning 20-17. But man, I'm not very confident.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength. Because to be honest, you had time. Like you said, you did your preview or you did yours. As you were talking, I was just coming up with my prediction right now. I had not considered it myself until right now, but I came up with 20-17 as well. I think that the wind is going to be a huge factor in this one, and we'll see.
Which, if it becomes a field goal game,
yes,
that favors Illinois, by the way. Kale's Griffin 4 of 5. Nebraska's field goal kicker 1 of 4. The only one he's made was like 27 yards. So just to put that out there.
We'll see it. Maybe more fourth down
Special teams, a real bright spot for this team.
They are. David Olano doing kickoffs now as well.
Has been great.
Yeah.
4th in the Big Ten in punting so
We
far.
should have talked more about special teams in this pregame show. A lot of good to talk about there.
4 block kicks.
I know.
Leads the country.
That does lead the country.
Shout out Robbie Dish.
Unreal. All right, but to my prediction, I do have 20-17. I am going the other way, though. I think Nebraska gets it.
Can't blame you.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of
more people listening right now agreeing with you.
Probably.
Yeah, Andy's a smart one. Why would you pick Illinois?
Maybe it's a little bit of like the reverse jinx of like, hey, maybe Illinois finally gets into the win column if I choose Nebraska, but
well, listen, this team barely beat Toledo. And Toledo's a good MAC program. They might be a better team than Nebraska.
They could easily be 1-5 at this point without that.
Barely beat Florida Atlantic.
Yeah.
And Florida Atlantic is not a great team, right? Yeah. So there's not a lot of confidence in this team. I don't think Nebraska's great, but I do know what they do. Like, they have kind of an identity. And Brett Bielema keeps saying, what is our identity? Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Let's see it tonight.
All right, we're on opposite sides, but toss up. Whatever you throw out there, I'm like, yeah, I could believe that. I could see that happening.
Really unexpected that this was a toss up.
Yeah, that's true. Before the season, like you said, this probably would have been very, very much in Illinois' favor. But Here we are, Illinois 2-4, and this one is at least a toss-up to the two of us. All right, we're about 1 hour, it looks like 66 minutes from kickoff now, 7 p.m., maybe a few minutes after that on Fox Sports 1. You know how TV, got to get those commercials in. Jeremy, anything online on the Illini Inquirer for people to check out before that?
Well, Illinois football better keep winning, otherwise people are going to keep just wanting the basketball content. We do have some basketball content. We've Derek Piper about Jace Butler's commitment. You can check out his analysis of that. I wrote about Quincy Guerriere. But I will have a story on Dick Butkus. I've been talking to a lot of people today about his legacy here, what he means to people around here. So I'll have something about that. And of course, all our stories and analysis after tonight's game.
All right, wherever you're watching this right now, tune back in after the game for Brett Bielema's full post-game press conference, win or lose. Hear his thoughts. I think it's going to be interesting no matter what, Jeremy, because usually he's been on it in the post-game press conference so far this season. So you're going to want to tune into that. Plus, we'll have highlights of the game on TV and on our website afterwards, WCIA and YourIlliniNation.com. This was the Your Illini Nation pregame show for Jeremy. I'm Andy. We are 1 hour away when Illinois takes on Nebraska on Fox Sports 1 at 7 p.m. We hope to see you later, and we hope that you enjoyed the game.